Right, so according to Casey Wasson, who is trying not to rewrite history, she said that 8 Indian decoys baited Captain Fetterman, trying to push him to advance his men over Lodge Trail Ridge. Some of the things they did is they cursed at the soldiers. The decoys gave the soldiers various hand gestures. The decoys even mooned the soldiers. And on top of that, and this is an Indian account, Crazy Horse even built a fire just out of the range of the soldiers' weapons and warmed his hands. Well, finally, an aggravated Captain William Fetterman could take no more, and he advanced towards the 8 decoys over Lodge Trail Ridge. As Captain Fetterman's command advanced over the ridge and into the valley, approximately 2,000 Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho Indians waited in ambush. Once Fetterman's men advanced into the valley, they were basically sitting ducks. Okay? Sitting ducks. Fetterman's forces were attacked from 3 sides. The only side they weren't attacked from was what side? The side they advanced down. Okay? And as a result of that, the group actually was split and were killed in 3 different areas of the valley. So my point is, they come over Lodge Trail Ridge into this valley, and of course there's ridges on all sides like we did yesterday. Well, what happened once they got in here, they ended up finding them dead in 3 separate areas within this valley. Why wouldn't they just all be in one spot then? Well, part of that, and then you got to think of them, part of them were on foot, part of them were on horses, okay? So obviously the infantry were not able to escape the ambush to what they might consider a safe area. So you're going to see a split. Now the first split was in the front of the battle. And what you had in the front of the battle near the end of the ridge, and we're going to say that Fetterman came over here, down in this corner here, you had 3 enlisted men and 2 civilians, James Wheatley and Isaac Fisher. So in this little area right here, trying to hide in the rocks, were 5 men, 3 enlisted men and 2 civilians, which tells you that they got really farther than anyone else did, right? Before they were killed down the valley. And when we go to the Fetterman fight, you guys will see exactly where these guys fell. Okay? Now, these men were not treated nicely after they were killed. What happened to them? Mutilated, yeah. So how did they identify that James Wheatley and Isaac Fisher, with 3 enlisted men that I'm not giving your names because they couldn't identify them, why did they know those 2 were there? How could they tell? What's that? Had what? Tattoos. That's a good guess. They didn't have tattoos, but there had to be some evidence that would state it was those 2 guys. They had to have something they were doing or something on their person or something they were using that would identify them differently from those soldiers. What do you think it might be? Clothing's a good guess. You're getting close. It had to do with their weapons. The soldiers were all equipped with the same weapons, 45-70s basically. These guys had Henry repeating rifles. Anybody know what those are? You can buy them, the Golden Boys. I just bought one. I bought it at 17 HMR day before yesterday. They're lever action Golden Boys. They call them Golden Boys because the carbine centering of the rifle is gold. Now, do you think those Native Americans killed those guys and took the rifles? Sure they did. So how did they tell they were there fighting? The cartridges. When they went back and found cartridges later, they found Henry's repeating rifle cartridges. And the only 2 people that had those were these 2 guys. So that's how they identified. Okay? So that's one group that was killed. Now, obviously, who do you think's at this end? The closest to the ridge. Which type of soldier? Infantry, on foot. So there was another group killed kind of right in that area. And that basically was Captain Fetterman and the infantry that he was commanding. Were all killed in that area. Then there's going to be another kill area in that area. Who would the other area be? Think about who was there. Cavalry, because they had horses. So you had 3 kill zones basically in this valley. You had 3 enlisted men along with James Wheatley and Isaac Fisher killed in the rocks here. You had 27 cavalrymen that were killed in this area here. They could get farther because of the horses. And then you had Captain Fetterman and the infantrymen basically killed in this area. Okay, so there were 3 different areas. Now, Lieutenant George W. Grumman was commanding the cavalry. And so he died in this area here with his cavalrymen. Lieutenant George W. Grumman was killed with his cavalry. And he wasn't really, actually, if I did this correctly, they'd be more, they were actually closer to Wheatley and Fisher than they were to Fetterman. So you have a kill area in 3 different areas. You have Fetterman and the infantry the closest to Lodge Trail Ridge, Grumman and his cavalry next, and then Wheatley, Fisher, and the 3 enlisted men farthest down. So, anybody remember what time Captain Fetterman was at the crest of Lodge Trail Ridge? What? 11:45. Well, at 12 noon, 15 minutes later, soldiers at the gate of Fort Phil Kearny heard what? From beyond Lodge Trail Ridge. What did they hear? Gunfire. Very good, gunfire. And when soldiers at the gate of Fort Phil Kearny heard gunfire from what they considered was beyond Lodge Trail Ridge, they contacted Colonel Carrington, and he climbed to a lookout, not Pilot's Knob. He had a lookout above his home, his headquarters. And he got up on top of that lookout and said, he couldn't really see anything, but he said the firing, as he listened to it, was, quote, continuous and rapid. So he knew something was going on. They weren't shooting deer over there, okay? So at 12 noon, soldiers at the gates of Fort Phil Kearny heard firing from beyond Lodge Trail Ridge. Colonel Carrington was immediately notified that he climbed to the lookout tower above his headquarters and was later quoted as saying, in getting on top of that area, he really couldn't see a lot, but he said the firing in his ears were continuous and rapid. Well, so he knows something's going on. So what does he do? Colonel Carrington orders Captain Tenador Tenike and 76 men to move out to Fetterman's relief to provide him support. So as soon as Carrington gets down from his lookout, he orders Captain Tenador Tenike and 76 military men to move out to Fetterman's relief, to relieve him, to try to support him. Is everybody kind of following what's happening here? Okay. Well, at 12:45 p.m., Captain Tenike and his men reached the summit of Lodge Trail Ridge. 12:45, they reached the summit of Lodge Trail Ridge. Now you think that's 45 minutes, that's a long time. Well, what did they have to do? First of all, Carrington had to see what was going on. Then he had to get Tenike together, and they had to mobilize and get ready to go. Okay? So at 12:45, they're on the crest of Lodge Trail Ridge. What did they see when they looked over the ridge? What do you think they saw, Paris, when they looked over that ridge?
Probably carnage or
You're on the right track. What would you expect them to see? Carnage. What did they see? All they saw was Indian warriors with jubilant cries and sporadic shooting. When they looked over, all they saw was a valley full of Indians, basically, shooting and celebrating. Okay? They even shouted up at Captain Tenike and his men, who they could see on the top of the ridge, inviting them over. Come on over. Come over and join the party. And for several minutes, Captain Tenike just scanned that valley floor, looking for soldiers, and saw none. Didn't see one soldier. Why? Where were they? What? On the ground. Very good. There were so many Indians in that valley, it wasn't until those Indians withdrew and went out of the valley that Tenike could see those dead bodies. That's how many Indians were in the valley. You couldn't even see the dead bodies on the ground. So finally, when the Indians withdrew from the valley, they finally saw the dead soldiers laying everywhere. And they estimated the battle took about 45 minutes, probably from about 1:45 when he was at the tip till 12:30. And not a survivor from Captain Fetterman's command. Killed to a man. Not a survivor one. One thing did survive though, and if I said they were killed to a man, that tells you that no men survived, but what might have survived? Close. Close. What else would you might? A donkey? No. What? A dog. A dog survived. A dog survived. Now there's a little bit of Indian folklore about this dog. I'm not sure what the story is, and nobody else does either. That's why we call it folklore. According to Indian folklore, one warrior stated the following: "Let the dog go back and tell the soldiers what will happen to them if they attack the Sioux." Because they were trying to decide whether they're going to kill the dog or not. And one warrior said, "Let the dog go back and tell the soldiers what will happen to them if they attack the Sioux." That's Indian folklore. Supposedly, one of the Indian warriors said, "Spare the dog. Let that dog go back and tell the soldiers what's going to happen to them if they attack the Sioux." However, according to folklore, many warriors wished that absolutely nothing survived the battle, and in the end, you know what they found with all the men down there? A dead dog. So they killed the dog too. And who knows whether the dog was killed by accident or on purpose, and who knows whether the person said, "Hey, let's let the dog live and send him back so they can see what will happen to him." Who knows? Indian folklore says that's the story. In the end, the dog was killed also. Not during the battle, but when? Afterwards. He survived the battle. I was pretty sure that he survived the battle. But again, who knows? Because nobody survived to tell the story. So whose side do you get on that? The Native American or Indian side. Okay? Well, what did Captain Tonight do once he noticed all those soldiers? You think he just rushed right down there and tried to aid assistance? Absolutely not. He waited on that high ground at the crest of Lodge Trail Ridge until the Indian forces had vanished, and he was very, very certain they were gone. And then he cautiously advanced toward the battlefield. So he didn't just rush right down there, because he didn't want the same thing to happen to him and his men that had happened to Fetterman and his men. Well, when they got down there, remember this is December what day? 21st? So it's not like today. It's snowing, cold. When Captain Tenike and his men advanced towards the battlefield, they witnessed dead men lying naked, mutilated, blood frozen in their wounds. Okay, it's cold. So they noticed these men dead, lying naked and mutilated, frozen, blood frozen in their wounds. Usually, after a battle like this, Native Americans took boots, guns, holsters, clothes. Many, many times in the Plains Indian Wars, the soldiers were stripped naked and mutilated. Many, many times. Now, Fetterman's command, the ones that were killed in that area, all lay in a circle about 40 feet in diameter. Every one of his men laid in a circle about 40 foot in diameter. What does that kind of tell you, Josh, if you see that? What do you think they did? No, the soldiers were all dead in about a 40-foot diameter area. What's diameter?
They were surrounded.
Well, yeah, they were, and they just hunkered down. I mean, you can tell when you're going to get defeated, you're just hunkered down. And they're right close to each other. They knew they were cooked. And they just hunkered down close to each other. How did they know that? Other than they found the bodies, what else did they find in a 40-foot diameter? Shell casings. Shell casings, yeah. All stacked up kind. Well, Tenike and his soldiers began loading the dead into ammunition wagons and heading back to the fort, and they reached the fort just as darkness was falling. You think they got them all? They bring them all back? Nope, they didn't get them all. But they didn't want to be there when? It got dark, yeah. So Tenike and his soldiers began loading the dead into ammunition wagon and then headed back to the fort without getting all the soldiers, and they reached the fort just as darkness was falling. They certainly did not want to be there in the dark. That evening of December 21st, remember it's a cold, dark evening, Colonel Carrington sent for a soldier by the name of John Portugee Phillips. So as Tenike and his men reached the fort, take back the dead they could accumulate, Colonel Carrington summons a soldier by the name of John Portugee Phillips. What do you think John Portugee Phillips is going to do? Anybody want to take a guess right now? What would your thought be if you were Carrington? You know, we're 80 some odd men, 83 men less than we were. He was always concerned about the loss of men. What do you think he's thinking is going to happen next? They're going to attack the fort. So what does he want? He lost 83 men. What's he want? Reinforcements. So what he does is he orders John Portugee Phillips to deliver a dispatch, which was the military term for a message, to department headquarters at Fort Laramie. And that message would tell Fort Laramie, we need reinforcements. We're anticipating an attack that could overwhelm the fort. Please send us reinforcements. So that same night of December 21st, 1866, John Portugee Phillips, is summoned by Colonel Carrington. He's given him a dispatch or message stating that they need reinforcements, and sends him to Fort Laramie. About 200 miles to Fort Laramie, actually 196 from Fort Laramie, 236 miles from Fort Laramie to Fort Phil Kearny. So he's going to ride 236 miles in a very cold situation. Is he going to go by himself? No, they're going to send 2 soldiers with him. So Phillips was ordered by Colonel Carrington to deliver a dispatch or message to department headquarters of Fort Laramie. The message told of the Fetterman defeat, and they asked for reinforcements. Phillips leaves with 2 other soldiers, and he travels 196 miles, he and the other 2 soldiers, in blizzard conditions. So they travel 196 miles of the 236-mile trip. How much is left? If your math's any good. 40 miles. Well, Phillips actually travels alone the last 40 miles and delivers the message personally to Fort Laramie on December 26th. That's when he gets there. December 26th takes him 4 full days and a little bit more. So Phillips travels with 2 other soldiers 196 miles, mostly in blizzard conditions, and then travels alone the remaining 40 miles and delivers the message personally at Fort Laramie, arriving on December 26, 1866, after traveling 236 miles. How, in Western U.S. history, what would you compare Phillips's ride from Fort Phil Kearny to Laramie to? What would you compare that to, that we've talked about? Paul Revere, very good. In Western U.S. history, the ride of John Portugee Phillips from Fort Phil Kearny to Fort Laramie has achieved a status equal to that of Paul Revere's famous ride. So what happened? We kind of got to back up. What happened the morning of December 22nd? What did Colonel Carrington do the morning of the 22nd? First thing he did. Think. What did he do? What did they do the 21st late at night? Brought dead soldiers back. They get them all? No. So what did they do the morning of the 22nd? Carrington went out himself and led a second party out to the battlefield to recover the remaining bodies that Tenador Tenike could not get the day before. And they took all of the bodies of the dead and they buried them somewhere near the fort. Anybody want to guess where they buried them? They buried them right below. What? Say it. Right below Pilot's Knob. And they still today have a white fenced area where the soldiers were once buried, because they ended up not ending, they're not still there. But at that point, after they accumulated all of those soldiers, they buried them in a makeshift cemetery just below Pilot's Knob. Now, you think about what time of the year this was. The burial detail had to build fires to warm the ground before they could dig the graves. The ground was so hard. So they actually built fires where they buried these soldiers to try to get the ground warmed up so they could get in there with their shovels. Kind of interesting how they did this, just typical of that day. They buried the enlisted soldiers, 2 men to 1 box, but they buried the officers in their own box. So these soldiers were buried 2 enlisted men to a box, with the officers being buried in their own box. Now, I told you that they were buried there originally, right? In 1890, all the soldiers killed at the Fetterman fight were exhumed from that makeshift cemetery at Fort Phil Kearny and reburied. Anybody want to guess where they're at now? All of them in a nice straight line. Including what? No, good guess, not quite that fancy. Ironically, they're buried at the Battle of the Bighorn National Cemetery, along with soldiers that were killed in that battle and officers. So if you go to the Battle of Bighorn, you go into the cemetery, there's just a long line, one straight long line of graves, starting with Captain Fetterman and the rest of the soldiers that were killed. They were exhumed and reburied at the Battle of the Little Bighorn National Cemetery. Now, how about Indian casualties? You think there were many? The ones that were killed as a result of what? Friendly fire. Because they were all around these outside on these bluffs. And what were they doing? Firing across, right? So any Native Americans that were killed in the battle was